You've done so much for someone, so much, that sometimes you think no one will ever understand the price you paid. Donna Lourdes, 62 years old, walked slowly along the wet sidewalk, balancing the box of sweets as if she carried an entire world inside. Her knees ached, her spine burned, her feet stinged, but she kept going. She always kept going. Every day, before sunrise, she woke up silently so as not to disturb anyone. She turned on the dim kitchen light, stirred the condensed milk in the pan, waited for the right consistency. It was almost like praying. Each brigadeiro she rolled had a hidden thought. May God bless my boy's future. May he lack nothing. May his life be different from mine. When she left home, no one saw the fear she disguised. Fear of not selling, fear of getting sick, fear of failing. But she never said anything. She just adjusted the scarf on her head, suppressed her tired smile, and kept walking. And while she sold sweets on crowded buses, at school gates, in the scorching sun, in the freezing rain, her son studied. He spent nights with open books, scattered notebooks, deep dark circles under his eyes. She watched from afar. He wanted to grow up, and she wanted to be the bridge. Years and years like that. Lourdes thought it all happened in silence, that no one saw, that no one knew, that a mother's sacrifice always remained hidden under the rug of time. And when her son got his first job and began to walk through the world with hurried steps, she thought she had become small in his life, almost invisible. Until one day, without warning, she found a simple envelope in the mailbox with her name handwritten on it. An invitation, no explanation, just a place, a date, a signature she didn't recognize. She thought about not going. She thought it was a mistake. She thought about 1,000 things. But she went. She sat in the last row of the auditorium, huddled up, hidden, afraid of being in the wrong place. She looked around, full of doubts, not knowing what to expect. What she didn't imagine was that night wasn't about the university. It wasn't about an event. It was about her, and that everything she had done in silence was about to be brought to light. Lourdes' story never started big. It started small, silent. One of those stories that no one writes about, but that sustains the world. Still young, she worked as a seamstress in a warm little room, full of colorful threads and overdue bills. She lived in hardship, but smiled at her young son as if she had everything. The child's father left the scene early, leaving only broken promises and a loneliness she never had time to feel. Lourdes didn't cry. She just gathered the pieces and moved on, because she had a boy in her arms and a whole future to build. Henri grew up watching his mother transform almost nothing into everything. She shared bread, stretched the beans, sewed late into the night. She was the kind of woman who didn't say, "I'm tired," even when her whole body screamed it. She always repeated, "Son, if I work today, you can study tomorrow." He believed her, and so did she. When money really got tight, Lourdes looked for another way to survive. One day, almost by chance, she made some Brigadeiro's Brazilian chocolate fudge balls to sell. She sold them all. The next day, she made more. She sold them again. And so it began. A dream wrapped in aluminum foil. The years went by, and Lourdes' routine molded itself to sacrifice. She woke up when the city was still asleep. She strained coffee, stirred the condensed milk in the pan, spread butter on the bread saved from the previous day. She went out to sell with a tired face, but with a strong heart. She endured rain, sun, and jostling on crowded buses, but she never brought a complaint home. To the world, she was just a candy maker. To Henrique, she was everything, and she made a point of hiding every pain, every varicose vein, every bit of dizziness. When her son asked, "Mom, are you okay?" she smiled with that motherly smile that tells the most beautiful truth and the most common lie in the world. "I'm great, my son. Better now that I've seen you." Henri grew up, studied, got good grades, and as time went on, he began to realize the weight she carried. But Lourdes was a master at disguising it. She didn't want him to feel responsible for her suffering. She just wanted him to fly. When he entered adolescence, the jokes began. Classmates laughed. Some shouted in the street, "Look, there's Henrique's mother, the Brigadeiro seller." And Henrique, even young, defended her. But Lourdes always pleaded, "Let it go, son. The important thing is for you to keep going. Seeing the boy dedicating himself to his studies, she found strength where there seemed to be none left. His future was the greatest prayer of her life. Each step he took was also a victory for her, and even when exhaustion told her it was time to stop, she persisted. His studies are worth my effort. They're worth everything. And they truly were. But over time, as Enrique began to work and became busier, Lourdes believed her sacrifice had become invisible. She began to think that no one saw what she was doing, that no one knew what she was giving up, that her silent love existed only to be swallowed by routine. She didn't complain. She never complained, because a mother's love doesn't demand anything. It only gives, until it hurts. She simply continued, believing she was fulfilling her destiny, pushing her son into life, even as her own life grew increasingly burdensome. Deep down, very deep down, she only had one fear, the fear that everything she had done would be forgotten. And this fear grew slowly, like a thread of sewing that comes loose without anyone noticing, until the day she received that mysterious invitation. Without knowing, without predicting, without expecting, life was about to give back everything she had given. Dona Lourdes' routine was always the same, but it was never easy. Even before the sun touched the rooftops, she was already up, her eyes still burning from the little sleep she'd gotten the night before. The smell of melting chocolate filled the small kitchen as she patiently and carefully mixed the brigadeiro, like someone preparing an entire future with her own hands. Everything was slow, meticulous, repeated every day, but each movement carried love. Lourdes had no rest, no days off, no holidays. She had goals, she had bills, she had a son studying, and that was enough for her to get out of bed even when her body begged her to stay. While rolling the sweets, she laughed to herself, remembering Enrique's small achievements. The first time he won a medal at school, his first award-winning essay, the first compliment from an important teacher. These memories ignited a flame in her that not even tiredness could extinguish. When everything was packaged, she arranged the makeshift box with clean cloths to keep the chocolate warm. She wiped her face with a damp cloth, tied her hair back, put on her best, simplest clothes, the ones that didn't show her exhaustion, and left. Always praying, always giving thanks, always believing that each step on that silent street was a brick in her son's future. On the bus, the ritual continued. She was pushed, stepped on, ignored. Many people pretended not to see the box she held against her chest. Others looked away, as if her work were an uncomfortable reminder of what they didn't want to be. But she continued, swallowing the humiliation with the same silence with which she swallowed her tiredness. During rush hour, she would announce softly, "Good morning, my loves." Fresh brigadeiro. Some bought it, others laughed. There were days when she heard, "Don't touch me, ma'am." Or, "It's tough, isn't it? You should get a real job." These phrases cut deep, but she absorbed the pain with a gentleness that seemed impossible. Sometimes when Enrique was younger, he would get angry seeing how his mother was treated, and Lourdes would always say, "Son, what matters isn't how they treat me, it's who I am." As time passed, Enrique grew up, went to college, and got an internship. He started coming home late, almost always too tired to notice that his mother's box of sweets was lighter some days, and almost full on others. The truth was, the world was getting harder for her. Age was creeping up on her unannounced. Her legs ached after hours on her feet. Her arms tingled from carrying weight. Her chest tightened when the crowded bus pushed her against the door. But she hid everything. She always hid it. When he asked, "Mom, don't you want to rest a little?" she smiled. She always smiled. Her smile was her shield. "I'll rest later, my son. Now it's your turn to shine." But deep down she knew her own body was already crying out for help. She knew she was exceeding her limits. She knew that sometimes she trembled with pain when she was alone in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, afraid of falling. Even so, she made a point of never showing weakness around Enrique. He had his own challenges, his own dreams, his own internal demands. She didn't want to be a burden. She wanted to be an impetus. Time passed, and he started working a better job. The pace increased. Responsibilities multiplied. Conversations between mother and son decreased. Not for lack of love, but for lack of time. Life sometimes creates distance even in the deepest relationships. Lourdes gradually began to believe that her sacrifice was becoming invisible. No one knew how many blouses she mended to avoid buying new ones. No one knew how many times she skipped lunch to save money. No one knew how many tears she wiped away in the middle of the night when back pain prevented her from sleeping properly. All of this was a secret made of love. And yet, she continued. Some days were worse than others. One day, for example, a group of teenagers passed by laughing and shouting while kicking her candy box. She knelt down, picked everything up from the ground, and continued selling. Her bowed head hid the shame, but not the pride. "It's okay. They don't know what they're doing," she repeated to herself. And that phrase was the shield that allowed her to continue even when the world seemed too harsh. Even when her son no longer noticed her tired steps. Even when she thought he would never discover how much she did for him. But inside her there was still a hope, small, fragile, almost silent. The hope that, one day, he would look back and realize the mother who sold candy wasn't just putting food on the table. She was supporting a dream. And it was this thought that made Lourdes take a deep breath, pick up the box, and go out for another day, without knowing that the future was already preparing something bigger than she could imagine. Something that would make all those years of sacrifice impossible to ignore. Dona Lourdes' days were beginning to weigh on her in a different way. Her body no longer obeyed with the same speed, and the pain seemed to scream louder than her faith. Even so, that morning, she insisted on continuing. She had sweets to sell, bills to pay, dreams to sustain. It had always been like this. If she stopped, everything stopped with her. The sky dawned heavy, laden with rain, but she wasn't intimidated. She prepared the brigadeiros with the same delicacy as always, placed them in the makeshift box, and headed for the bus stop. The cold wind cut her skin, bringing back every memory. But what hurt most wasn't the cold, it was the silent knot that grew in her chest each time she felt her age weigh more than the box full of sweets. The bus arrived packed. She boarded with difficulty, being pushed inside as if she were part of the crowd, as if she weren't a woman carrying the breadwinner of her own home. She tried to hold on, but her arm trembled. She tried to hold the box steady, but someone bumped into it, and almost everything fell. A young woman caught the box in time. Lourdes thanked them with a shy smile, the practiced smile of someone who had learned to be grateful even for the smallest things, even when she deserved much more. The rain started heavily when she reached the city center. The drops hit the box, soaking the cloths, hindering the work she was doing so carefully. Lourdes opened her old umbrella, which trembled more than her hands. The torn cloth let the water fall directly onto her shoulders. Even so, she persisted. "Brigadeiro, my loves." Very sweet. Her voice was lower, weaker. Her steps slower. And the rain, heavier. There was little movement. Almost no one was buying. Some avoided her, others quickened their pace. Some just looked with pity, and pity was the last thing she wanted to receive. The sun never appeared when she needed it most. When the afternoon arrived, Lourdes' body seemed more tired than she could remember in her entire life. Her spine burned like fire. Her legs felt like stone. Her head spun slightly, as if floating outside her own body. But she needed to sell more. She needed to pay the electricity bill. She needed to save money for the uniform Enrique needed for his new job. She needed to keep going. She needed to be strong. Always strong. Strong even when it hurt to be strong. Until, upon entering the subway station, the world finally demanded payment for everything she had been ignoring. The heat of the stuffy place, combined with her weakness, made her body tremble in a way she had never felt before. She felt breathless. The voices around her echoed as if they came from very far away. The box in her arms became too heavy. Heavy as all the responsibilities she had carried for years. She tried to ask for help, but her voice wouldn't come out. She tried to lean against the wall, but her arm failed her. She tried to take a deep breath, but the sigh remained trapped in her chest. And then, the ground came first. Dona Lourdes' body gave way, silent, tired, exhausted from fighting so much alone. The box fell along with it. The sweets scattered across the floor. Some rolled onto the dirty boots of strangers. Others were trampled without anyone noticing. It was as if the world had decided to ignore even her fall. Some people looked, but they didn't approach. Some pointed, but they didn't help. A lady murmured, "Poor thing, another one feeling unwell out there," but she kept walking. A young man chuckled softly, saying, "Those old vendors never know when to stop," and he continued on. Lourdes tried to get up, but her legs wouldn't obey. Her arm trembled so much that it was impossible to support her own weight. Her vision darkened, turning gray at the edges, and a warm tear, mixed with rainwater, ran down her tired face. It wasn't just physical pain. It was the devastating feeling that no one saw, no one knew, no one cared. She had always been strong, but at that moment, she felt the utter fragility of a life that had always needed to be resilient. And she felt, for the first time, that perhaps she didn't have the strength to continue alone. After a few minutes, a station employee approached and asked, without much tact, "Can you get up by yourself?" She nodded, even though she couldn't, because she had learned, over the years, never to bother anyone, never to ask for too much, never to take up too much space. She carried herself as best she could to a nearby bench, her trembling hands trying to gather the ruined brigadeiros. She picked up each one as if she were collecting pieces of herself. None of the saved sweets would be suitable for sale, but she kept them anyway. When she finally got home, Enrique was studying, focused, oblivious to his mother's dejected expression. "Good night, Mom. Good night, my son." She didn't mention the fall. She didn't mention the pain. She didn't say she felt fear for the first time. She just smiled the same practiced smile and put the box away, pretending everything was all right. Because, that night, she saw Enrique sitting at the table, studying with the same determination she had always tried to give him. And that simple gesture rekindled the dormant strength within her. If he was fighting, she would keep fighting too. She lay on the bed, her body aching and her heart in pieces, but certain that she could still endure. Because where strength was lacking, love still abounded. And that love was what kept her soul standing. That night, Lourdes fell asleep repeating the same prayer she had said since her son was little. "God, just let me keep going." And destiny, silently, was already preparing the answer. That fall would not be the end. It would be the beginning of the moment when the whole world would discover who that woman was who had always gone unnoticed, but who never stopped getting up, not even when the ground seemed to be the only possible place. In the following days, Dona Lourdes tried to act as if nothing had happened. She got up at her usual time, turned on the dim kitchen light, and put the pan on the stove. But as she stirred the condensed milk, she felt her hand tremble. It wasn't just any tiredness, it was her body telling her what her soul already knew. She was going too far alone. The fall at the station left invisible marks. Her body ached in places no one could see, but there was a deeper, quieter pain that hurt even more. The feeling that she was losing her own strength. That strength that had always sustained the house, her son, her life. The strength that seemed infinite, until it ceased to be. Even so, Lourdes put the brigadeiros in the box. She looked in the mirror for a moment. She saw a tired face, marked by years of struggle, but still full of love. The scarf on her head was crooked, but she adjusted it. Not because she wanted to look better, but because she always dressed up for the world, even if the world never looked back. When Enrique woke up, he found the table with fresh coffee and simple bread. "Mom, you woke up early again? You never rest." "I'll rest later, my son. Now it's time to fight." She said this smiling, so as not to weigh down his heart. But when he left, the house became too small to contain her silence. Lourdes sat on the bed and took a deep breath. For a moment, she wanted to cry, but she held back. Her hands touched her knee, which still ached from the fall. The memory of the station came flooding back. The cold floor, the people passing by, the harsh words, the overwhelming loneliness. She thought about giving up. She seriously considered it. But looking at the table, she saw Enrique's notebook open, full of notes, with hurried handwriting. He had spent the night studying while she fought against her own weakness. That image ignited what little remained inside her. "I've endured so many years. I'm not going to fall now." Even saying that, the fear persisted, because, for the first time, she felt that her body no longer kept pace with her faith, and that scared her more than any financial difficulty. Sales weren't going well. Her legs didn't respond as before. Her arms complained, and for the first time in her life, Lourdes began to think she was failing her son. The idea that he might be disappointed in her cut deeper than any physical pain. That afternoon, while rolling Brigadiero's Brazilian chocolate fudge balls, something strange happened. The tears simply came, without her being able to stop them. They fell one by one onto the table, silent, heavy, hot. She tried to dry them, but more came, until she couldn't pretend anymore. "Am I not coping?" she whispered to herself, her voice choked with emotion. Did I fail? It was a question she had never asked herself before. She always believed that if she gave her all, everything would be all right. But time doesn't forgive, and the body knows when it's reaching its limit. She held the closed box of sweets. It wasn't just chocolate inside, it was the summary of years and years of sacrifice. Sacrifice that no one saw. Sacrifice that she believed would die invisibly. Until, at the end of the night, the postman rang the doorbell. "Mrs. Lourdes, there's something for you." She was surprised. Almost nothing ever arrived. She signed the paper trembling. She picked up the envelope. It was simple white, with her name handwritten on it. Did she recognize Enrique's handwriting? No, it wasn't his, nor anyone she recognized. She stared at the paper for long seconds. Part of her wanted to open it immediately. Another part, tired and hurt, was afraid. Afraid it was a bill. Afraid it was something worse. Afraid it was anything she didn't have the strength to face at that moment. She put the envelope in the drawer and decided to wait. But the envelope seemed to call to her, as if it carried something she needed to know. That night, alone, with the house silent, she decided to open it. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a demand. It was a beautiful, elegant invitation, with her name written in a respectful way, as no one had done in a long time. Her heart raced as she read each line. "We invite Your Excellency to a special ceremony. Your presence is indispensable." But it didn't say why. It didn't say who invited her. It didn't say what would happen. Only the date, the time, and the place, a university she had never entered. Lourdes frowned. She thought it was a mistake. She thought about returning it. She thought about giving up. After all, why would someone like her be invited to something so elegant? But deep down, something told her that the invitation wasn't for nothing. That perhaps, just perhaps, there was a greater reason behind it. That night, before going to sleep, she pressed the envelope to her chest and whispered, "Whatever it is, may God give me courage." She didn't know it yet, but that simple piece of paper would be the beginning of the change her soul had been waiting for years. The day marked on the invitation arrived faster than Dona Lourdes expected. Since finding that note on the door, her heart seemed to beat at a different rhythm, a mixture of anxiety, fear, and a curiosity she herself tried to suppress. She didn't know who had sent it, or why. But something inside her, some gentle voice that had always guided her through difficult times, told her she needed to go. So, that night, she chose her finest dress, though simple, carefully ironed. She tied her hair back with the same elastic she had worn for years and applied a lipstick that was almost finished. She looked in the mirror and saw a tired woman, but firm. A woman who had weathered storms and could still stand. At the bus stop, she clutched her purse tightly. She looked like a girl going to her first school performance. The journey was slow, noisy, full of conversations, announcements, honking horns. But inside her, everything was silent. She tried to imagine what would happen, trying to prepare herself for disappointments because life had already taught her not to expect too much. When she arrived at the indicated address, she paused for a moment on the sidewalk. It was a huge, brightly lit building, with well-dressed people coming and going. High heels, expensive suits, strong perfumes, loud laughter. Everything seemed so distant from her reality. For a second, she thought about turning back, but she took a deep breath and went in. She knew she couldn't ignore that mysterious call. Inside the auditorium, the blue chairs stretched almost to the stage. Huge screens displayed the university logo. People chatted animatedly, professors greeted students, parents took pictures of their children. She felt invisible, but used to it. She found a corner in the back, where no one would notice the simplicity of her dress, and sat down carefully. As she observed the surroundings, she felt a pang of pride. This was where her son always said he wanted to be, in a big, important place. full of opportunities. And without her realizing it, a small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Perhaps, just perhaps, it had something to do with him. The lights dimmed. Silence fell. A professor went up on stage, speaking about achievements, merit, perseverance. And suddenly, she heard his name. We invite to the stage student Enrique Santos, winner of the Young Academic Promise Award. Lourdes froze. Her hands began to sweat. It was her son. Her son. He went up on stage, elegant, confident, with the same sparkle in his eyes as when he was a child, proudly showing her a drawing. The audience applauded loudly. He was outstanding, an example, someone who had overcome all difficulties to be there. And she, in that dark corner, felt her chest swell with emotion. But she soon noticed something strange. Enrique didn't reach out to take the trophy. He didn't smile at the photographers. He didn't turn to the audience. Instead, he asked for the microphone. And the instant his hands touched the device, Lourdes felt her heart race as if something enormous was about to happen. Enrique took a deep breath. He looked at the entire audience, and then he looked beyond them. He seemed to be searching for someone. "Good evening," he began, his voice firm, but laden with something different, an emotion he was trying to control. "Today, I should receive this award as recognition for my effort, my work, my dedication." The audience nodded, applauded softly. "But the truth is, this award isn't mine," a murmur began. The master of ceremonies looked confused. Some professors exchanged glances. Enrique continued, "Nothing I've achieved in life, absolutely nothing, would have been possible without someone who never appeared in any photos, who never asked for recognition, who never complained about anything, and who was always there." Lourdes' eyes began to well up, but she still didn't understand. "I want to call here the woman who taught me what work is, the woman who woke up before the sun, the woman who sold Brigadeiro in the rain, in the cold, in the heat, just so I could have the chance to study." The audience fell into absolute silence. A young woman in the front asked softly, "Who could it be?" Enrique then raised his face and in a firm voice said, "Mother, are you here?" Lourdes' world stopped. She put her hand to her chest, trying to control her breathing. Some people turned around, looking for who he was calling. And when they saw Dona Lourdes sitting alone, in her simple dress and with tears in her eyes, they began to make room. Enrique pointed to her. The stage spotlights found her. "Mom, this tribute is for you." The imaginary box of sweets slipped from her hands at that instant, as if the weight of life had been lifted from her shoulders. She tried to stand, but her legs trembled. A young woman beside her helped her. Other people began to applaud. First a timid applause, then louder, and suddenly the entire auditorium was on its feet. She walked slowly to the stage, feeling her heart pound like never before. As she climbed the steps, Enrique hugged her with a strength he hadn't had since he was a boy. He was crying. She was too, but her tears were of relief, of victory, of recognition. It was as if all the years selling sweets, every early morning cooking, every hidden pain, were transformed into light there. Enrique took a deep breath and said into the microphone, "Everything I am is because I had a mother who never gave up on me." The audience applauded once more, now with genuine emotion. And Dona Lourdes, for the first time in her life, understood. Nothing she had lived through had been invisible. Nothing she sacrificed had been forgotten. Nothing she did was too small. Enrique saw it all, and he kept it all in his heart until the right moment to show it to the world. There on the illuminated stage, she wasn't the woman who sold sweets. She was the mother who sweetened her own son's future, and the whole world was finally seeing it. After that night, nothing in Dona Lourdes' life was ever the same again. It wasn't because life suddenly became easy. It wasn't because money started falling from the sky. It was because, for the first time, her heart felt that she hadn't lived in vain. In the days following the tribute, her name spread like wildfire. Some of Enrique's colleagues sent messages, others went to her house in person to meet the mother of the Brigadeiro's Brazilian chocolate fudge balls. University professors made a point of hugging her and saying, "Sincerely, your sacrifice changed the story of one student, and because of him, it changes the story of many." Lourdes listened to everything with a mixture of surprise and humility. She never saw herself as a heroine, only as a mother. Enrique, on the other hand, seemed like a different man. More than a son, he now behaved like someone who truly understood the weight of the word gratitude. He began to closely follow her routine, to ask more questions, to observe with different eyes. "Mom, from now on, you won't carry this weight alone anymore." And he wasn't just talking about the box of sweets. He was talking about her whole life. He no longer ignored the varicose veins in her legs. He no longer pretended not to see her calloused hands, her slumped shoulders, the tiredness disguised in her smile. For the first time, Enrique saw his mother as someone who also needed to be cared for. Over time, Donna Lourdes' story began to inspire other people. The teacher responsible for the award invited her to speak at a small meeting with parents of students. She almost refused, shyly, thinking she wasn't good with words. But Enrique insisted, "Mom, you don't need to know how to speak beautifully. You just need to tell the truth. Your way is already beautiful." And she went. She sat in a simple chair, microphone in hand, the same hands that had so often wrapped sweets to secure his future. There, before strangers, she recounted how she started selling brigadeiros, how she took crowded buses, how she fainted one day at the station and still decided to continue. She spoke of faith. She spoke of fear. She spoke of love. No one blinked. Some mothers wept silently. A father clenched his hands, thinking of the times he had complained about having so little. At the end, she was applauded again standing. But this time, the applause had a different weight within her. It didn't seem like a distant tribute. It seemed like a hug. As the months passed, Enrique grew in his career. He was promoted. He got a raise. He managed to organize his finances. And the first thing he did, with the money that began to be left over, was to look at his mother and say, "You don't need to work like this anymore. If you want to continue with the sweets, let it be because you like it, not because you need to." Lourdes remained silent. Her head told her she should stop, that she had already given all she had to give. But her heart knew that those sweets represented much more than income. "You know, my son," she replied sweetly, "I didn't sell just for money. I sold for hope." Enrique smiled. "Then from now on, we'll transform that hope into rest. You fought too hard." Together they agreed on a plan. Reduce sales, organize the finances, allow Donna Lourdes to finally have time to rest, to live, to breathe without rushing. Even so, something beautiful happened. When her story spread, many people from the community sought out the mother of sweets. But they didn't come with pity. They didn't buy out of pity. They bought with admiration. "I want Donna Lourdes' brigadeiro," they said. "The one made by the young man who became a reference at the university. The one who never gave up on her son." And little by little, the sweets became a symbol of strength, of sacrifice, of love. Some schools in the area invited her to sell at their gates, but now in a different way, organized, with a reserved space, with students knowing who she was. It was common to see children running up to her, saying, "Auntie, you're the mother of the young man from college, right? My mother said you're an example." Every time she heard that, Lourdes' heart filled with a different kind of warmth, because, without realizing it, she had become something she never imagined, an inspiration. And what was once a source of shame, a source of laughter, a source of prejudice, was now a source of respect. One afternoon, returning from one of these schools, she guided the box of sweets with calmer steps, without the desperate haste of before. Enrique accompanied her. He carried some of the sweets. She carried the rest, not out of necessity, but out of habit. "You know, my son," she said, breaking the silence of the street, "I used to walk past here afraid that people would see you and be ashamed of me." He stopped. "Ashamed? Of what?" "About me, selling sweets on the street, all sweaty, with an aching arm, calling out to people on the bus." Enrique took a deep breath, his eyes welling up with tears. "Mom, if I was ever ashamed, it was of myself, because it took me so long to understand that all my steps were possible. Because of yours." She lowered her eyes, swallowing her tears. Her son continued, "I graduated, but you're the one who never gave up. If anyone deserved a diploma that day, it was you." Lourdes smiled, a gentle smile, full of peace. That night, sitting on the small living room sofa, in her usual uniform and with a light heart, She thought about everything she had lived through. She thought about the times she felt no one saw her effort. She thought about the rainy days, the throbbing varicose veins, the humiliation of hearing laughter. She thought about the nights she cried silently, believing she would die without anyone knowing what she had done for her son. And then she remembered the moment he pointed at her in the auditorium. "Mom, this tribute is for you." Looking at herself, her body still marked by time, but her soul at peace, she took a deep breath and said, as if recounting her life in a single sentence, "I sold sweets, but what I truly sweetened was my son's future." From that day on, Lourdes understood that nothing a mother does is lost. Even what the world pretends not to see, God sees, time sees, and sooner or later, the heart of the one who received it also sees. She didn't become rich. She didn't move to a different neighborhood. She didn't buy an imported car. But she gained something priceless, the recognition of the one who mattered most. Enrique wasn't just a successful son. He was the living result of her love in the form of opportunity. And that was enough. Perhaps other people looked at her and still saw the woman who sold the brigadeiros, but she knew the truth. She was the mother who transformed suffering into stepping stones, tears into bricks, and sweets into diplomas. And deep down, that was the most beautiful freedom she could have, the freedom to know that her own story hadn't been in vain. When night fell and the house grew silent, Dona Lourdes sat on the edge of her bed and let her thoughts slowly drift back along the paths she had traveled. Each memory seemed to come with the scent of chocolate, of warm dough, of burning sugar, memories that hurt and healed at the same time. She closed her eyes and saw herself, younger, balancing trays, running after buses, trying to sell one more sweet to pay for another notebook, another bus fare, another tuition fee. She remembered the times she thought she was alone, the times she believed her effort would never be seen, the nights she cried softly so her son wouldn't wake up. For many years, she thought she was invisible. She thought that, in the end, she would only be a mother who fought, and nothing more. But in that auditorium, when her son pointed at her in front of everyone, she realized a truth that changes any mother's heart. Nothing born of love is lost. Nothing done in silence fails to resonate one day. No sacrifice goes unanswered. Lourdes understood that the love she gave whole, suffering, humble had germinated in a man who carried within him everything she had planted. And perhaps it's the same with many mothers. Mothers who defend their children tooth and nail. Mothers who fight without witnesses. Mothers who sell, cook, clean, wake up early, go to bed late, and still feel they don't do enough. Mothers who give everything and think no one sees, but the world sees, God sees, and sooner or later, the child himself sees, even if it takes time, even if life needs to teach along the way. Enrique's tribute didn't give Lourdes back the years of exhaustion. It didn't erase the pain, but it sealed something greater: recognition, respect, the love that finally returned to her in the form of gratitude. And this teaches something powerful. There are sacrifices that seem small to the world, but are gigantic to those who receive them. How many mothers like Lourdes forgo buying for themselves to buy for a child? How many work in silence? How many fall ill without telling anyone? How many are mocked, belittled, forgotten but remain steadfast? How many times have you looked at your mother, but not seen what she carried on her shoulders? This story is for them. For the mothers who believe in their children's future more than in their own. For the mothers who trade comfort for opportunity. For the mothers who walk warily, but never stop. And for those watching, a question remains simple, yet profound. What did your mother sacrifice for you that you may never have thanked her for? Think about that for a moment. Think with your heart, not your memory. Because sometimes what you think was little was her entire life. And if this story touched you, then leave your gesture here. Not for me, not for the story, but so that other people, other mothers, other children may see and understand that love like this deserves to be echoed. Comment, like, and follow the channel. Be part of this community of women who overcome difficulties and transform pain into strength. Every day, real stories to inspire and to remind us that no mother fights alone.